So Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm really chuffed to be here, Will.
I always love our conversations. We always have such fantastic conversations and they really are enjoyable, and I've got no doubt that this is going to be exactly the same. So for people that don't know too much about you, obviously you've got a phenomenal passion and interest in personal development and professional development, and you've worked with some incredible people to do some incredible things. I'm right in saying it's sort of 30,000 plus coaching hours that you've done. Is that right?
It is, absolutely. I think it's more than that now. I've been in the game about 20 years. And, 20 years ago, nobody in the UK had a coach. They didn't even know what it was. And when I used to sell as a coach, they thought it was to a football team. Nothing could be further from the possibilities. It's been a long road of learning. And like you, one of the many things that we share is curiosity. And I've just channeled that passion and curiosity into understanding the human form, and of course then extending that to how we can connect with the universe and really have it all, just have how we make our dreams come true.
Well, I'm really interested because you're exactly bang on. We've got very similar interests in terms of understanding how we operate and how we get the most out of our potential. And you look at things quite holistically, both from a spiritual perspective, from a scientific perspective, from the psychology element of it all, and you sort of weave it all together. Similarly myself, and try and create this I suppose process and way of people achieving great things. And you are renowned now, sort of not just nationally but internationally, for coaching people that are already arguably successful. I mean, in the respect of material wealth, and have a lot of things to be able to have it all. So when we talk about having it all, what is that? What is it all if people are already successful that maybe they don't have?
Well, I think it's so subjective, isn't it, success? If I've got 5 houses and 3 cars and I can go anywhere in the world on my private jet, that looks like success. But often under the bonnet, there is a lack of happiness, a lot of people can't even experience joy. They don't actually know what that feels like. Teaching somebody how to master their own emotions, their own mind, and then with a bit of luck and the wind behind us, to master their connection with the universe, which of course, when people come to me, well, they normally say, that voodoo shit that you do, I don't want any of that. Because I tend to work with quite hardcore people. And within a couple of sessions, they're normally curious and want me to open up on that as well. So for me, having it all is when we have all the material things, of course, but we live our passion, we live on purpose, we live within our values, but we use our emotions, our mind, our humanity to our best possible effect.
Love that. Absolutely love that. And we're definitely going to be delving into the realms of the sort of more spiritual, universal work in this podcast episode. I'm really looking forward to that. So let's start with that, actually. So like you say, these arguably sort of very successful people have achieved a number of things, and they want to progress in life, but like you say, they're missing fulfillment, they're missing joy, which they're ultimately going to feel emotionally. How do people become more spiritual? How do you help people to become more spiritual or connect with the universe? And in fact, sorry, I'm asking a few questions here, but how do you differentiate the difference between being spiritual and connecting with the universe? Because obviously for a lot of people, being spiritual is more down the religious route. So how do you differentiate?
Okay, so you've just hit the nail on the head. Spirituality and religion do not live in the same house. Mm-hmm. Religion is something that has been formed over thousands of years in many cases, but it is man-made. We create the rules, and often, I think the Bible's been written, I can't remember how many times, but, they get rewritten according to our cultural values shift. Okay, so you turn up to the house of religion, whichever that is, and you perform some rituals, and you give great gratitude and ask for some goodies. That's great. That's not what spirituality is at all. Spirituality is when you have a connection with your own higher power. And whether that is a cat sitting on the moon eating cheese, or whether it is the universe, or whether it is Mother Nature, I have no interest in whatsoever. The actual form of that intelligent power is completely private to you. The rules that you have between you and that spiritual power, the way that you communicate with it, is completely down to you. The only rules that are set out in spirituality are the rules that you create. And that's the real big difference.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So in terms of some of these rules then, so would it be fair to say that the people that come to work with you, and maybe some people that are listening to this right now that are maybe not feeling fulfilled, they're not feeling joy, is that a lot of the case because they're not following those spiritual sort of in inverted commas rules? Do you put that down to that?
Oh gosh, I think that it's that the reason that we don't feel fulfilled is we tend to be working to achieve something that we didn't have in childhood, because usually our highest value is what we didn't have in childhood. And we become destination junkies. When I get that house, when I build the business to that, it's always when I. What we do then is, if we build a life on when I's, we miss the journey, and life's a journey, it's not a destination. Now, the other thing that I think is really important is that most successful people work extremely hard, and they are often stressed or overwhelmed, or they're usually very focused and dynamic, but nonetheless, that there's often a stress factor there, and an intensity addiction. Now, as an intensity junkie myself, let me say, I'm all for it, but we need to channel it. What intensity does, if it's not channeled, is it numbs us. So, I might go and watch 8 episodes of Ozark on Netflix. Great, but be honest, you are numbing, okay? Or you might do a line of Charlie, or you might do a bottle of wine, or you might learn a lot. We can get lost in a book. All of those things are going to numb us. Numbing and spirituality are on the opposite sides of that, what is that called? That thing, the line, the spectrum. Thank you. Yeah. So if we want to be spiritual, if we want to have spiritual connection, one of the first things we've got to do is be prepared to feel. We've got to actually embrace our humanity. And we struggle with that a bit.
Okay, so it's being prepared to feel it, and it's really interesting you mentioned about numbing. So a lot of people, if they talk about becoming more spiritual, then they'll talk about awakening, becoming more awake. And obviously numbing, you're really doing the opposite, aren't you? You're sort of closing up, almost becoming asleep, if you like, in terms of wanting to shut away from certain things and cut off from certain things. So so what are your sort of go, if it's the Michelle Zelli's beginner guide to getting spiritual, what's that process?
Well, the first thing is you have to think about where you're feeling what you're feeling. So you might say to me, Michelle, I am so stressed. Where are you feeling that stress? In my head. What does that tell me straight away? You've disassociated from your body. So all emotions are felt in your body, not your head. Okay, your head makes a story about them. So the first thing I do is I help people connect with their body. And the next thing, or simultaneous thing, is you've got to slow down. A lot of what you do isn't creating your goal. Okay, a lot of what you do is habitual, and we don't take enough time out to think about what that generally 20% is that creates the 80% of gold. Okay, so let's take some time to feel who you are, to get to know yourself. We've got to slow you down. So most people have become busy fools. Now I say that with love and respect, and as somebody who was a really busy fool, always running from pillar to post, always got 1,000,001 plates spinning. But the reality is often that gets us significance. I'm so important, I don't have time for this. Yeah. And the other thing, we've normalized stress. That's really a bad habit that our culture's got us into. But actually, so we've got to slow down. We've got to feel what we feel, and then we've got to understand what needs and wants we have. Now, these are things that in a really healthy childhood, we would have been taught. And no judgment on your parents. All of us who are parents will know that you know, we feel guilty about one thing we did or didn't do or what have you. Your parents were probably doing the best they could with what they had, but nonetheless, your blueprint is what you're now acting out. Mm-hmm. So let's have a look at that blueprint without judgment, just through eyes of curiosity, to see how that's impacting who you've become, how you operate on a daily basis, and ultimately how that interacts or doesn't interact with your higher self and your spirituality.
Love that. Absolutely love that. So in terms of you personally, so you've been doing this work for 20 years now, and one of the things that's always really fascinating with anyone that I ever speak that does this kind of work is that their journey as to how they got to it. So I'm guessing you didn't wake up one day and go, yep, that's what I want to be when I'm older. In fact, I know that's the case. We've spoken on many occasions. So I'd love for you to share with the listener how you got to that point, because it's been fair to say that one of the things that you're fantastic at with your clients is turning adversity into a real superpower. And I think that's because it's fair to say you've done that for yourself.
It is. It's exactly what I've done. You know, so my own childhood was pretty crappy, to be honest. I was adopted to people who didn't want me. So I genuinely was unwanted twice and abandoned twice. And that, of course, led to a whole host of really negative behaviors, which I acted out for the first, well, pretty much 30 years of my life. It was 10 was my turning point. I was as good as gold to 10. That wasn't working. And then it was that the rebel really came out to play. And, you know, she's fairly present now too. But what happened was that I worked, I was quite successful in my career. And I ended up working for a large blue chip company called Centrica. They're the largest private employers in the country. And I was a sales director. And I worked 80-hour weeks. I burnt myself into the ground because, like many people are successful, my self-esteem didn't match the position that I'd managed to claw myself to. So, you know, we think about 87% of people have imposter syndrome, executives. This, you know, it's normal. So, and I was no exception to that. I had normalized working ridiculous hours under immense pressure. And then we had 6 weeks holiday a year, which was great benefit. But all I did was I lived for the holidays. And then when I went on holiday, it was usually somewhere gorgeous. I would then fall apart, feel, because my body is now releasing all the stress. Then I would be on a downer because it's like a come down. So then I would drink, you know, or whatever to just get through those few days before I started hyping myself back up in order to go back to work. Well, of course, that took its toll. And that was in collusion with the wounds from my childhood that therapy hadn't got close to. So I had a breakdown, which they called executive burnout, when I was 40. That also coincided with meeting my real dad. But just before that, what happened was that about 4 years before that, I had been offered a personal development budget in my role. And a colleague of mine phoned me up. She knew I was absolutely on my knees and said, look, there's a training course up in North Yorkshire, 5-star hotel. It's 9 days, pet peacocks, and they've got dogs at the hotel. Well, that's all I need to know, Will. 5 stars and pets. I'm there, right? So off I go. And it turns out it's a neurolinguistic programming course. So that's what I do. I basically sit in on an NLP course the first 3 days with my arms folded, absolutely having none of it. The teacher was Dr. Susie Strang, who to this day I'm hugely indebted, who really got me. And by just on day 3, she cracked me open and I started crying, and I didn't stop for a long time. I loved NLP, the science of how you can program your life, how you can create your life and take control of it. Because by this point, my life was just veering from drama, successful drama, but nonetheless drama, one drama to another. I took the NLP back to my management at Centrica, trained my regional managers. They in turn trained the sales team, the sales force, and we just had an incredible, a profitable and real positive business. The managing director called me in. He said, "Michelle, what the fuck are you doing?" And when you go, by the way, when you get called in to see the MD of a company that size, well, I mean, it's pretty nerve-wracking. And I had no idea what it was for. And I said to him, it's NLP, Mr. Wood. And he said, well, in that case, I want you to roll it out to the board of Centrica. I want you to go to the board of OneTel, the AA, because we own, and Halfords, we owned those businesses. So that's what I did. So quite without having a clue what I was doing, may I say, off I went in my car and delegated my day job to some of my regional managers, and I became a coach. I still was running I was still sales director for the most part, but there was a lot of coaching involved. I didn't want a sales director anymore. And Russell, one of my managers, phoned in the sales figures on Sunday night, which is what you always do in direct sales. And it was awful. His figures were terrible. And he was quite nervous because I was quite punchy back in the day. And I said, Russ, I said, honestly, I said that there are babies starving in Africa. I just can't get excited about the fact that your sales figures aren't great. And I knew I had to go. I just knew I'd lost my passion. So I decided, after my breakdown, I basically got out of commerce, and I went and learned from some of the best people in the world and some of the wackiest people in the world about the humanity. I felt very let down by therapy. I didn't think coaching went deep enough. Therapy has never been dynamic enough for me or goal-driven. And I wanted to create something in the middle. Everybody said I was nuts, and I did it anyway.
Love that. Absolutely love that. And we certainly both share the I suppose the catalyst in our personal development journey into run it as a professional capacity down to neuro-linguistic programming and the impact that's had. And then you created The Shift, which is your company, right? That works with people to do exactly that, I guess, is to create a shift and make a change in their life and go on to do that. I'm curious, NLP is obviously a broad topic, and you've mentioned sort of how sort of therapy wasn't goal driven enough, and coaching at the time didn't go deep enough in the way that it operated. What have you found as an NLP tool, or something in the toolbox of neuro-linguistic programming that you use a huge amount with your clients to create significant results? I mean, I know there's so many great ones, but what would you say that?
I think it's languaging. I mean, my job when you're sitting in front of me as a client is I know what's going on with you at a cellular level. I mean, I work with clients in Singapore, Hong Kong, all over the world. And even on Skype, I can tell when they've got energy running down their legs. I have used NLP to understand language and the way of what you're really telling me with what you think you're telling me. Does that make sense? The words that come out of someone's mouth, they think they're telling you that much, they're telling you that much. Pretty much, I always have a discovery call with potential clients, and it's usually about 20 minutes, but after about 7-8 minutes, I know a lot about them. And they'll say, how the hell do you know so much about me? Because as wonderful as humans are, we're really predictable. I know that certain behaviors come from certain wounding, and I can just shortcut the system. NLP gave me the initial insight into humanity, into the human workings, and pure curiosity and practice has then allowed me to build on that.
Love that. Absolutely love that. And I think language is so powerful that yeah, I always say words create worlds, and
Yeah.
when you really understand the power of language and how people are using it, it does become a gateway, doesn't it, into really what's going on.
Really
So
does. And also, with the way people breathe and their state, that's a real NLP word, their physiology, understanding that it's not the brain telling the body, it's the body telling the brain what we can do with our physiology. I mean, I could honestly go on forever about what NLP has given me.
we'll do it. We'll do another show in weeks to come about specifically on NLP. So one of the other things that you have, I suppose, obviously using the tools of NLP, but you've almost become known for nowadays is boundaries. And I think boundaries these days, the word, I remember when I first heard it some years ago, I was like, what, those things around land? Is that what you're talking about? But these days it's becoming more and more common, and maybe it is just because I'm in the personal development space, but it's something that can have a significant impact on your relationships, both personal and professional, in a big way. So seeing as you're sort of pretty much the boundaries queen these days, I'd love you to share with the listener a little bit about boundaries, the importance of them and how they can implement them, and the benefits they'll get from that.
I'd love to. Just shut me up when you've had enough. Here we go,
Yeah.
right? When somebody said to me, when I started this journey, let's talk about boundaries, it was because I had none. Not only did I not know what they were, I just had no concept of having a right to manage or to have my feelings and my needs catered for. It wasn't in my history, so therefore I didn't bring it into my present. So boundaries are how we put ourselves out in the world, our needs, our values, what we need to be the best of ourselves. And so a boundary lets the other person understand how we show up in the world. That's probably the best way that I can put it. Now, there's lots of different types of boundaries. We tend to, if we didn't have a healthy boundary childhood, we tend to flop from no boundaries to walls. We tend to put boundaries down only when we're angry, in which case we are proving to ourselves that they're not okay. Okay. Anger is a sign that our needs aren't being met. That's really the purpose of anger. You'll notice that anger is the only emotion that makes you feel stronger. So shame or fear or love or joy, they've all got their own values and signposts for sure. But none of them make you feel stronger. The reason that anger makes you feel stronger is it's designed to help you propel forward and put a boundary down.
Do you know what? It's really interesting you say it, because I often say to people that anger is a surface level emotion of sadness, which I suppose if you're feeling sad about something, then the anger's purpose is to get you to not feel sad by having that boundary. Because if you had the boundary, then you wouldn't be feeling sad. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. I love that.
When I work with people with rage issues, underneath rage is grief. Let's lift up the rage. Let's deal with the grief. And it's hard. Grief is normally the last emotion we're able to deal with because it is so consuming. So yeah, but coming back to boundaries, if you find yourself oversharing, if you find you come away from a meeting or a group of people that, oh God, I wish I hadn't said that, or you come away from a date and they know all of your history, they know all your sexual preferences, you've overshared, guy, all right? And so that's a lack of boundaries. But one thing that's very rarely spoken about are personal boundaries with myself. And I'm a big believer that if we have integrity with ourselves, it is much, much easier then to build it externally. So I tend to coach from the inside out, and therefore let's look at where you have boundaries. What we do, and we do have boundaries, we just sometimes don't enforce them or we don't know them. So if we get conscious about our boundaries, when we go and buy a pair of shoes, we know what our top line is. When we go to work, we know what are the number of hours we're prepared to invest on. We've got all of these rules in our head. We're just not very good at being conscious of them. So let's get conscious, make sure they work with our values, the life we want to create. And then let's practice some boundaries to make sure that they are upheld. And how do I get my needs met? You know, do I know what my needs are? So again, let's go back. What are my needs in order to show up and be the best version of me? How do I communicate those needs to everybody and anybody I meet? Because otherwise I'm expecting them to be incredibly good at guessing.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to get pissed when they're not.
Yeah.
And when you say it, think about it like that. We're all, you know, oh, I mustn't tell people what I need because it sounds selfish. It sounds like I'm being demanding. No, what we're going to do is we're going to let them guess, and then you can get really angry and be horrible to them. That makes sense.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's so funny you say that, because one of my little mini mantras for people is happiness is equal to or greater than expectations. And if our expectations aren't met, then we're unhappy. But so many times, and I've experienced this obviously myself, which is one of the big signals where it's come across, is that if I've not told people and communicated effectively what my expectations are, then it's on me that I'm constantly feeling upset and unhappy because my expectation. But if I haven't communicated with someone what they are in the first place, then that's going to happen. One of the things that you mentioned was personal boundaries, and you mentioned sort of work, of how many hours that you're willing to work, and you mentioned, I don't know, the shoes, of what your top line price is going to pay. So how do people know to set their own personal boundaries? I mean, does that just come down to discipline, or?
Well, the first thing is understanding what's important to you. So, for instance, if you're going on a date, what are your red flags? Know what your red flags are before you get schmoozed and what have you. You know, write that list so that it's clear to you. The same with work. Before you get enchanted with a role, write down what the red flags are. It's very difficult to see and enforce see red flags and enforce boundaries if we're doing it on the back foot, because we're right there in, you know, you don't see, what is it, you don't see the wood for the trees, you're right there in the forest. So ahead of the game, and I think that we should all be taking an hour or 2 out a week at least to just helicopter above our lives, look at the different sections, what's going really well, I'll do some more of that, what's not going not so well, where's the pattern here? Okay, we can't see our own blind spots. I have a coach, you have a coach. It's not about not being competent, it's about being willing to accept the fact that I can't see my blind spots and I need somebody to help me with that, to change those patterns, because that's ultimately what they are.
Yeah, for sure. You can't see the label when you're in the jar, can you? So
that's a lovely expression. I shall steal that.
So that sort of boundaries, and again, I think it's so like such an important thing. When you say when you think about it, and actually taking that time out to think, reflect. I mean, you said an hour or so to reflect, right? What's going on? What's working? What's not working? However simple that resource is, from sort of some coaching tools like doing a wheel of life, which people could Google as a really basic tool. I use something called a happiness monitor, which if I'll put it in the link to this, which is basically 20 areas of life. People score on a scale of 1 to 10 how it's showing up. It's a really good way of getting clear on that. Are there any other ways that you suggest people to reflect and sort of do that helicopter overview that you find particularly works well with clients?
I think to honestly ask yourself, what is working well, what is good in my life, and what isn't where I want it. But don't judge. It doesn't matter. You know, as soon as you say good or bad, right or wrong, you're screwed. Why? Because it's a judgment, and you can't be curious and you can't be curious while you're judgmental.
Oh, I love that.
So your judgment stops you learning. It stops you understanding about yourself. So I might say, you know what? Yep, this area of my life isn't actually maxing out as I'd like it to. That's interesting. Now let's just look what I tried. What's happened? What are my beliefs around that? What's really important to me about this area of my life? Let's map out my values. So it's getting an all-round perspective. But honestly, and this is, you know, please, I'm not touting for business. Get yourself as good a coach as you can afford. You know, even if you only see that coach once every 2-3 months, get that blueprint of what you can't see, your blind spot. It's worth its weight in gold.
Couldn't agree more. Like you say, the blind spots are where well, you say if you're driving down the road and you've got a motorcycle in your blind spot, you pull out, you take the action, boom, you hit the motorcyclist. It causes a catastrophe, but that could easily be avoided by just having that extra pair of eyes to check the blind spot for you and on your behalf, which is where a coach really comes into play. And I think it's fair to say, obviously we're both coaches, but any coach will agree with this, and anyone that's been coached, I'm sure will agree with this. Whatever the investment into coaching is, it will pay back significant dividend personally, professionally, emotionally, financially, as a result of that, whatever that investment.
I mean,
it really is an investment. It's not a cost, in terms of what you get.
Yeah, and I know I'm certain. I'm not sure if you do this, Will, but I absolutely guarantee every client but you'll see a difference from the first session. And if I don't pay my way, there's no fee.
Yeah,
if I do not give you more than you pay.
Results or refund guarantee, and there's not many coaches that I know that offer that, and the fact that you offer that as well just speaks dividend to kind of where you're at. So one of the other things I wanted to touch on, because I know there's so many really interesting places that we could take this today, is you've gone through your own adversity. Obviously you mentioned sort of your personal challenges and whatnot. What's been your biggest challenge to date, and how did you overcome that?
Oh my goodness, feeling unlovable, I think. I think that ultimately that's got to be one of the hardest things for any human to overcome. So, if you feel unlovable, you are worth nothing. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, what I did was I acted that out for the best part of 30 years. Now that's a lot of evidence that you are worth nothing. And thank God, or thank the universe, that when I had my breakdown, it picked me up and shook me and plonked me in another dimension. And from that moment on, my trajectory just changed. But was it easy? Good God, no. It is simple, but it is not easy. And I think that to build self-love, self-care, self-respect, self-esteem, I think that's absolutely critical. We've got to have that inner resource, that inner strength, that inner belief, and then we can pretty much leap wherever we want to go. Now, if we then bring in the universe, which I did, and I can't take credit for that, the universe came to me. I was really cynical. I was having none of it until it was so in my face. I just couldn't deny it any longer. When you've got those two, your platform inside to spring from, and you've got a superpower going on, I mean, it's you're pretty untouchable.
So I know people talk about the feather, the brick, or the bus. You're either going to get tickled by the feather, hit by the brick, or be hit by the brick or hit by the bus. In terms of being woken up by the universe, you're going to respond to one of them, but it's just whether you get all the way to the point of being hit by the bus. So you mentioned obviously you got to that point, the breakdown, and you've already shared that, but for people right now that maybe are feeling low in self-worth, low in self-love, low in self-esteem, do they need to get to that point where they hit rock bottom, or is there something they could be proactively doing to start to make change?
Look, the truth is that most people change out of desperation or inspiration, and most of the time it's desperation. Why? Is because it's so bloody tough.
Yeah.
Not difficult. It's tough. And, I call it warrior work for a reason. But I think when you got someone who has been through it, and this isn't just textbook, I think it really helps them, because you feel supported, you feel like you know where you're going, between you anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I love that, the feather, the brick, or the bus. I mean, I shall definitely be using that. And the way that I always say it, the universe knocks on the door gently, then it rings the bell, and then it gets a baseball bat, and then boom, it's through the window. So it's same thing, different phraseology. But if you're feeling as though your self-esteem and your self-worth is low, first thing to do, evidence every day in a book, get a journal. How have I impressed myself today? The more self-impressedness that you do, the more you will embody, okay? Whatever you focus on, you will magnify. And most of us who feel unlovable, not worthy, imposter syndrome, what we're doing is we're evidencing the very thing we don't want. We lay in bed thinking what we didn't do, what we screwed up, how we could have said, how that just wasn't quite perfect. And by the way, P.S., perfection is the highest form of self-abuse. Okay, perfectionism, I should say it's not perfection, perfectionism, there's no such thing as perfection, has been started in childhood, and it is so destructive. So if I've got a client who comes to me with perfectionism, we work on that straight away.
That's interesting. So if someone they class themselves as a perfectionist and they're constantly trying to do everything, so you class that as abuse for what reason, in terms of how they're punishing themselves for not achieving, or
You're setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah.
So if I say, as a coach, if I set you up we set up a goal every week and it's always out of your reach, I think you'd have a right to call me an abusive coach. Because what are we going to do? We're going to sit you down. So why didn't you do it? What does that say about you? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. One of the reasons people do it is they get used to self-attack. And once we get used to something, it becomes habitual and we can even become addicted to it. And you'll know this, you'll know this from your own clients. People have a good run and then what do? And I was number one in the queue here, self-sabotage. Because I was so used to being put down and not feeling okay about myself. When I had a little stint of goodness, it felt so weird. Unconsciously, my unconscious mind wanted to go back to what it knew. So self-sabotage is another feature in the coaching journey.
It definitely is. It definitely is. So I've not met any high achiever, of which you are certainly a high achiever in what you achieved in your corporate career, and then what you've gone on to achieve in the personal and professional, your personal professional life. Obviously, you've worked with a whole multitude of high achievers. What are some of your daily or weekly must-do, non-negotiable routines that enable you to perform mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically at the levels that you do, Michelle?
Oh, lots of them. So the first thing is time in nature, at least 5 times a week. I start the day in nature, generally walking. I am meticulous about learning, so I listen to audiobooks. Last month I hit 29, so I was really chuffed about that.
I'm for the month. Wow.
Yeah. So what I'm learning to do is multitask. So, when I go out walking, then, and I walk for a couple of hours a day, then I'm also, I've got an audiobook. And what a lot of people don't know about audiobooks is that you can bookmark them and write notes. So by the time I come back, I can then decipher the bits of wisdom and work with those. Connecting with the body, breathing. I'm a big fan of taking care of our pineal gland. Pineal gland, however you like to pronounce it, and that is just here. That's also known as the third eye.
So for people that are listening to this, because obviously this is on YouTube, by the way, so I'm going to plug the YouTube channel. If you're not on, if you listen to this on Spotify or Google Podcasts or iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast, we do also record these, so you can see how beautiful Michelle looks. On YouTube, you can always go and watch these on YouTube as well. But where she pointed to was sort of about an inch or two above her forehead, above sort of in between her eyebrows, so right in the middle of the forehead.
And it's about the size of a thumbprint. Yeah. And so that's where your pineal gland lives. And so there are certain breathing exercises that actually keep it clean, keep it producing plenty of DMT, and DMT is very helpful when it comes to connecting with your higher self, for your intuition. And for me, I run my life on intuition, and I highly recommend it because your brain will tie you up in knots. And how many times have you've been thinking about something and you just have the same thoughts and no answers? When you've got intuition, you can just override that. So that's hugely important to me.
Sorry to interrupt. So I'm really curious. because I'm a huge fan. I call it conscious breathing. I mean, we all breathe every day, but conscious breathing, very few do it. I do it in the form of box breathing, Wim Hof breathing. But what are some of the breathing exercises you do to sort of cleanse your pineal gland?
Just really simple, breathing into the belly. And as you breathe in, the belly pushes out.
Yeah.
And you breathe out, the belly flattens down. Now, what that also does is it dislodges stuck emotion. So don't be surprised if you've not done the work. You could cry, you could laugh, you could, all sorts of emotions will come up. But I'll do that for about 10 minutes, and that's 3 rounds in 10 minutes. I don't do it every day, but it is something that I do several times a week. What else do? I love a salt bath, Will.
Right.
And so that is half a kilo of organic magnesium flakes, half a kilo of Epsom salts or organic sea salt. And the sea salt will draw out energetic impurities, and the magnesium will actually go through your skin. It makes your skin lovely and soft, Will, so you'll want some of that. But what it also does is it soothes your nervous system. And as somebody that's had a breakdown and lived a high octane life for a long time, I have to take really good care of my nervous system. So that's where the breathing, the time in nature, they come in. It's also managing my stress levels. People take the mickey out of me about protecting my pink bubble. I have no interest in a reality that doesn't serve me. I create my reality, and I do that by managing what I allow in. So, I'm not a great fan of negativity for the sake of negativity, nor am I a fan of the happy clappy club. I like to keep it real, but I like to be held. I like accountability and responsibility. I'm really not feeling great today. My life's really not going in the way that I want it to. Okay, what should we sit down and do about it? So that way I'm feeling constantly empowered. And I think that for me, that really helps. And I always know where I want. I always know where I'm going. And I say that because actually there is a caveat. At the beginning of this year, I spend a lot of time by the coast now, and I wasn't quite sure, because normally it's a career orientated goal. And I was, pretty much I've got it going on. I love my clients. I make plenty of money. I've got more work than I know what to do with. And there's lots of opportunities that come. So where do I go with that? And then I realized that what I wanted to do is I wanted to go into areas that coaching hasn't yet gone to. So I keep it fresh, I keep it exciting. And that again, that really keeps me on a spiritual level as well, because when we're all in awe of life, life tends to give us more to be in awe of. And last week I started working with sex workers, and as far as I know, there's no coaching in the sex work industry. So teaching self-esteem, boundaries, that kind of thing, bit of marketing as well, but it was mainly self-esteem and boundaries. And I want to do more. I want to do more in places that we don't normally go.
Love that.
To keep it fresh.
So on obviously you said that one of those last things, and I think this is really important. And you touched on it with therapy, so I'm not going to get into the therapy has its place. I have my own personal opinions on certainly on what coaching can do for people and the benefits of coaching, because it is very much forward focused and future focused. And you said knowing what you want is a really important thing for you. What about role models? I mean, was there anyone growing up in your career, professional life, or even now in recent times that you've looked at, that you've aspired to in sort of the form of a personal hero, or someone that you really looked up to?
I call them muses, and I change them. Okay, so Coco Chanel has been one of my muses for as long as I can remember. And if you don't know about Coco Chanel, just in a potted history, she grew up, her first few years were in an orphanage. There's a gap, nobody knows the truth. She then managed to get herself to Paris. She had a talent and a gift and just grew. I mean, how she had the balls that she had. I mean, again, I think this is where desperation, or what is the term what is the necessity is the mother of all invention. She's the mistress of that. She ended up changing women's fashion she created trousers, and her life was just, she beat every possible challenge, including an adverse start in life. So you can understand why she would have appealed to me. And then I guess Mama May, Elon Musk's mum.
Mm-hmm.
She's just recently really gone up my muse chart, and she was a big factor in me having my white hair now. I've gone fairly natural, my roots are now natural, and it was looking at her strength, her passion, her courage that really inspired me to take that leap. So I do. I take inspiration from people I meet every day. My clients inspire me. This is a two-way street.
Yeah, I say that to people all the time. It's one of the satisfactions of being in this type of work is that every day you get. Well, I find myself constantly surrounded by people where I'm working with them. I'm thinking, wow, it is incredible the work you're doing, and the like you said, the adversity they've gone through, the things they've achieved in their life to this point, what they go on to achieve. It truly is inspirational. So no, thank you for sharing that. I'm just curious. You obviously mentioned your childhood and certain things, but when you was younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be, it's very specific, Will, I wanted to be the best divorce lawyer for women in New York.
Oh, wow.
I had a vision, and I can describe the office that was in my head. I had a huge penthouse glass windows, 75th floor. I knew what I was going to wear. I absolutely knew that's what I would be. And the truth was, I still think I would have made a damn good divorce lawyer for women.
I don't doubt it, yeah.
Unfortunately, I wasn't supported in my education at all, and I had to leave home at 16. So there was absolutely no chance of being able to do that. But I think I've made up for it. In my world, I'm very happy where I've got to.
I'm curious, and this is just my I mean, every time we speak, I think you label me Mr. Curious or something along those lines. But I'm curious. Obviously, that being the divorce lawyer at 75th floor, New York, from sort of I suppose a significance perspective, but also as a what's the word I'm thinking of? Almost like a vigilante type thing of sort of doing great things and enabling people to achieve certain things. Do you think that almost you've still achieved the kudos and not bravado, what's the word I'm thinking of? The status, I suppose, but you did that obviously in your own corporate career, and then obviously have gone on to do that with being one of sort of the sort of elite life coaches in the world.
I think the word that I would use is gravitas.
Right, gravitas.
And there was a bit of sassco. The suits were beautiful, the heels, the shoes. I mean, I could see it so clearly, and I did all of that. I'm not so much now. I'm much more relaxed in what I wear. But I think that I channeled that energy into achieving really well. I was managing director of a TV company as well before I went into coaching, and so I did a lot for somebody who left home at 16. And then having got to where I have as a coach as well, I think that I've just channeled that passion, that determination. And it's the same energy in a different direction. And that's exactly what I was saying about channeling our adversity, our addiction to intensity. That's what I've done.
I'm curious for someone that's obviously achieved a huge amount and like you say, lots of the clothes and things like that. Has that changed for you in recent? Am I right in saying I saw something not long ago along the lines of minimalism and sort of going down that kind of route? Was that?
Yeah, I think. Look, when I do think that the clothes, the handbags, the fast cars. Not that I still love my fast car. Actually, let's take that out of the equation. But I think that they were status symbols that I needed to be the full package. And as you can see from today, I'm now much more likely to rock up in a sweat top and it doesn't matter. I like to be comfortable now and focus on everything on the energy that I'm putting out and what's coming back to me. I don't regret, by the way, that the wardrobes of clothes and the shopping expeditions. I loved them at the time, but I'm also very much a planet person. and fashion is the 6th most destructive industries in the world. And I just feel that I want to do my little bit for the planet, and I try, therefore, to become, I've become much less of a consumer. I've not tried, I've actually become less of a consumer.
And it's just, I think, kudos to you, because it just shows that change journey. I mean, 29 books in the last month, or whatever the time frame is. It just shows you're constantly learning, but you're not just learning, Michelle, you're evolving yourself. I mean, we literally own the Evolve network and run programs called Evolve, and I'm a huge advocate for evolving. I look at my I even, the thing that makes me laugh is I see Facebook, these time hop memories come up of a year ago or 2 years ago, and I think, oh my God, did I do that? Is that really how I thought? Like the expression of whatever it was that I put in that particular post those years ago. And for me, I love that, because it just shows how I've evolved. Only this morning I was having a conversation with a young lad, and we were talking about what life was, and one of the things that I strive towards is ensuring that every year I'm growing, every day I'm growing, and I'm becoming an improved person. It doesn't mean I get it right every time. I still make cock-ups and do things that months later I look back and go, maybe that wasn't my best decision. But you're doing that, and you're continuing to do that, which again, I think that makes it you truly an inspiration. And no wonder why so many people want to work with you, because you're doing that work yourself, And
I absolutely do. I eat, breathe, sleep this stuff. And I'm also really honest, and I go out there on social media when I screw up.
Yeah.
This is, I don't believe that it is helpful for us just to put out there the show reel. I want you to know, I had a real difficult issue around April time, and I was very upset with something that happened, and I went public with it. I didn't go into the detail because obviously it involved somebody else, but I wanted to talk about grief. I wanted to talk about loss, because that's my opportunity to help people real time. And whilst I'm learning as well, because all my processes I create myself.
Yeah.
And I love doing it too. So every time I screw up, or every time another wound pops up, there's a little part of me that goes, yay, come on then, what are we going to make out of this? And I think it's one of the things I love about you, whereas I mean, we've known each other a few years now. I can see the difference every time you and I meet, in your energy, the way that you hold yourself, what you're focusing on. It's wonderful. I love it.
Thank you very much. So again, we could talk all afternoon, and we will certainly do another episode very, very soon, I'm sure. But knowing what you know now, you're an incredibly wise woman that has not just studied the theory, but gone through it and over it and under it, and every way around it, you've been there. If you could send a message to your younger self at the age of, I don't know, 15, what would you tell yourself?
Oh gosh, well, there's so much. Do you know what I think? I think number one is, you've touched on this, you've got to go through it. You can't go around it. I thought that I could shortcut things. I didn't believe that my childhood was abusive, by the way, despite over a dozen therapists telling me so. I absolutely did not acknowledge it. And that's not unusual. So I think that I would say to her, come on, their behavior was never about you. And I would spend as much time with her that got her to believe that and embody that truth, and to be kind to yourself, that somebody else's opinion of you, somebody else's behavior to you, and in my case it was my adopted parents, does not define your true worth. It defines their inability to be functional human beings. But sadly, I spent decades trying to work that one out. And one of the reasons that I'm pretty much the top of my game, is because I spent so many years making horrendous decisions. I mean, some of the things, and again, I'm quite open about it, but I don't sit here in any glass house, let me promise you. I never for 1 minute forget what I've been through. And how many times I've reinforced the wounding and the scarring and ripped myself open by not having boundaries, for instance. boy, did I get myself into some pickles.
No, I love that. And thank you so much. I think it's some really powerful lessons there for everyone that's listening. So Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure having a conversation with you, as it always is. If people are listening to you for the first time, listening to this and going, wow, this woman sounds incredible, I want to connect with her more, I want to find her, not literally, but they want to connect with you on all the usual places. How can people find you and connect with you?
So Instagram, I've got lots of stories up every day to keep you inspired, bit of wisdom, a little bit of humor, a little bit of edgy humor. I've just opened a YouTube channel, so you'll find lots of my work. I'm putting videos up there a couple of times a week, so that the people that can't work with me have got access to my processes, which just aren't out there anywhere else. It's just Michelle Zelli, and please subscribe. And just give me a ping and let me know whether you love it or not. Facebook, I've got a coaching page, but really, if and obviously, if you want to do one-to-one coaching, and I also I'm working with more and more groups now on Zoom and what have you. So if you've got a particular area for a group that you'd like me to speak with, then just ping me over. Let's chat.
Fantastic. So what I'm going to do is in the show notes, I'm going to put a link to your YouTube channel. I'll put a link to your website so people can find you and get access to you. So Michelle, once again, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and we'll look forward to having you get back again very soon.
Thank you very much. It's been a delight, as always, Will. Thank you.
And for you, the listener, thank you for listening. I'm sure you found this episode extremely insightful. Remember, come and join us in the Make It Happen community Facebook group. So you can come and join us there and connect. And I know Michelle hangs out in there as well. So come and connect with everybody there. I've been Will Polston. Until next time, make it happen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make It Happen with Will Polston podcast. Make sure you join Will's free Facebook group, the Make It Happen community. Please support the show by subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Google Play. Share this episode with at least one friend you think would benefit from it, and give Will a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. Until next time, make it happen.